Okay. And I love that you just called out Phil Donahue because that's amazing. That should be done on every call. With that being said, good morning, everybody. I see a lot of faces I know and love and new faces, so this is great. I am Joyce Shapiro, for those who don't know me, president of IFLA Boston. On behalf of the board of directors, the committee chairs, and the volunteers who orchestrated today's Teams workshop, I'd like to thank you all for joining us. I know that I will be taking copious notes because I have no idea how to use Teams. I was just commenting how ironically we're talking about teams on Zoom, but hopefully that'll change and we'll be moving to Teams from now on. It's become a standard across organizations and offers a lot of opportunities for shared communication and collaboration, but it also has a learning curve, which I think everybody knows who jumps from Zoom to Teams. I know I do. IFMA Boston utilizes the application for our leadership team and have scheduled this training for all of us to learn, and the more we know, the better we can do. We're so thankful for today's trainer, Michael Zeppieri. Oh my God, he just told me how to pronounce it and I messed up. That was the
Zeppieri.
Zeppieri, Michael Zeppieri. He's the director of emerging technology at Skanska. So thank you, Michael, so much for doing this. He'll be, oh, I just lost my notes, sorry. He will be helping us today some of the pain points we had, and then is leaving time for us to all ask questions. We want this to be interactive and useful for all of us, so we're going to do a breakout room. Okay, I'm turning it over to Michael to introduce him, and let's get started.
Thanks, Joy. So as Joy mentioned, my name is Mike Zeppieri. I'm based here in Boston and work for Skanska USA Building. Most of you are probably familiar with our company. We're a global CM firm headquartered in Sweden. And I work for the U.S. business unit that's anchored to New York, but we have an office and a presence in Boston. But I'm part of the National Emerging Tech team. So my day job is to evaluate all the technologies and disruptions that are coming at the construction industry and figuring out if they have a place in our world, and trying to figure out the value. And just by nature of my role and my background, I also tend to gravitate towards digital tools, and MS Teams is one of the tools that I've gravitated towards. And it's really been accelerated as a result of the pandemic. Our company was just starting to experiment and pilot with MS Teams prior to the pandemic. So we barely had our toes wet in terms of understanding the tool, and then global pandemic hits, and at a necessity, everyone surged to the tool, and we've actually found it to be beneficial. It does some things very well. It does some things like most Microsoft tools. There's like frustrating limitations. It's like, why can't it just connect these dots for me? So I don't know that I'm the global expert on MS Teams. I mean, I've not received formal training, but what I can share with you is, as someone who's worked in the digital collaboration space for most of their career, and has done a lot of things on the lean and the work planning side, I could just show you tips and tricks, things that have worked for us. And I'm really here to answer your question. So I think a better use of the time would be for me to understand things that you're trying to do as an organization, and then I can guide you towards, well, this is how you might want to think about solving it with this platform. So the agenda will be, I think we're going to do an icebreaker. I'm going to give a very quick overview, some tips and tricks, best practices, but really here to listen to all of you and take questions and see if I can help. So that's really it.
Awesome. Thank you. So yes, what we thought, because first of all, there's a huge group of our leadership here, and I always want everyone to have an opportunity to kind of, chat and get to know each other. So we wanted to put you into a breakout. You'll have 3 to 4 people in each room. It'll be for 5 or 6 minutes. So each person take a turn to your name, your company, and what is one thing that you struggle with on Teams. And then when you assign someone to kind of keep notes, and then you can read that out in the chat. And so that way we can use that to kind of help guide us in that question and answer period as well. Sound good? All right, let me, 1 second. A few more people joined in. So I want to make sure everyone's in a room. And awesome. And there you go. Or again. So hopefully you got to meet someone who met someone new in their room.
I did.
Excellent. I love it. So whoever was taking your notes, if you could just put them
In the chat?
into the chat, and then that way, as we go through, if anything that I'll be watching what you've put in the chat. And that way, if we don't touch on something, I can make sure Michael sees that. So, all right, Michael, I'm going to take it away.
Okay, I'm just going to read the chat real quick as the things are coming in because it'll help me understand where the pain points
Frame,
were.
sure.
Okay, so a lot of functionality issues, some people looking for better tips on just how to use it. Some things that are tied to the configuration and some things, unfortunately, that I don't think I am going to be able to help with, like if you're having audio issues, account login issues, like that's something that, you know, your IT group or whoever administers your Teams account would have to look into. Like that would be somewhat difficult for me to troubleshoot on this meeting, but I can share tips and tips and tricks and how the app is configured and how to best use it. So let's yes, this is helpful. So thank you, that the icebreaker was good to do because it gave me some good context of how you're all coming into the meeting. So thank you for that. So let's talk about first what MS Teams is. So, you know, Microsoft being who they are and the tools that they, you know, offer to corporate America and the MS Office suite have, you know, increasingly been moving into the digital collaboration space. And prior to Teams, the tool that they offer to large, you know, any enterprise really was SharePoint. You know, SharePoint was meant to be a digital collaboration tool. It had some team collaboration capabilities, but at the end of the day, it was one place to go to do a couple of things reasonably well. Share and collaborate around documents and create lists and things that you could track stuff as a team, you know, and then extensions of that are things like calendars. And then they started to incorporate, you know, as SharePoint evolved, and they saw, especially with the emergence of the cloud. So like once the cloud came into being and mobile devices came into being, and you started to see a shift in how software was deployed and delivered, especially things like app stores, is suddenly users had more capability on their smartphones than they had on their corporate devices in terms of the integration between apps. So Microsoft, you know, recognizing that the world was going to a cloud-based world and an app-based world, they started to change the architecture of SharePoint. They tried to do app integration in the SharePoint. I will say it was clunky, never really worked well. So what MS Teams really represents is the evolution of SharePoint into a more cloud-based, app integrated based collaboration platform. So what a lot of people don't know is on the back end of Teams is SharePoint. So every single Teams site has a SharePoint site behind it. So some of the things that you can do on Teams, you can also do in SharePoint. And I'm going to show some examples of that and where you might want to actually go to SharePoint and manage it there as opposed to doing it on Teams, because not all the integrations are clean, or what Microsoft is doing is on the Teams version of their native apps or their desktop apps, they're offering streamlined versions, and the streamlined versions of those apps, like whether it's Excel or Planner or any of the other Microsoft tools, what they do is within the Teams environment. So if you're working in those apps within the Teams environment, it's not a fully functional version of the app. Like if you want to have the full power of some of the apps, you have to go to the desktop version, and that sometimes, you know, confuses people. You know, when do I want to work on something in Teams? When do I want to work on it on the desktop app? And what a lot of people sometimes do is when they switch to the desktop app because they want to have the full functionality of the desktop app, they save a local version of the file, and then they've just severed the link to Teams. So now you're working on a local version of the file as opposed to the Teams-based version of the file, and the document needs to live on Teams for it to be something where other people can collaborate. So that's a little bit of the background of what Teams is. So what I'm going to do is share my screen now and start walking you through some basic things about Teams based off of some of the questions that I saw. So the first thing is just the interface itself and what, can you guys all see my screen? I should have asked first.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the first thing about Teams is the interface itself and what it's showing you, like what you're able to do and what you're able to see. So, on the left-hand side, you've got, basic navigation to the core functions of what Teams does. So there's an activity feed that gives you basically activities across all the teams that you belong to. So you could see here within the Skanska environment, I'm part of quite a few teams. And the activity feed is really in place to help you navigate where you should direct your attention. And there's some best practices around what you do in chat and what you do in documents to make the activity feed more useful to people. I will say I don't really use the activity feed so much because I get inundated with so many alerts. It's typically, if I need to go find something in Teams, it's more driven by, me knowing to go look for it or people getting my attention on chat. And then that directs my attention to where I need to be. The activity feed is sometimes useful, but in all honesty, it's there's so much in there. I mean, it's just like never ending activities. The chat feature I use quite extensively. So what I love about the chat feature is that it saves me from writing a lot of emails. So like internal to my team and internal to the people who are within Teams on Skanska, like I will use chat instead of email, because then people have what I like about using chat instead of email is then people have the context of the whole conversation. So typically what happens is an email, you send an email to two people, but there was a third person that you should have included on the original email, and then they get the forward, or they're included on a reply, but they don't have the context of the previous emails. And you've probably all been in a situation where email just kind of takes on a life of its own, and it becomes less productive than it could have been as a communication tool. So I've actually don't use email for much of anything anymore for internal communications with my team. I like using chat. If I need to pull a group of people together real quick to ask a question, I'll set up a chat with them. Like I'll literally just go into here and start a new chat and start entering into names. So it's like if there's a couple of my team members, if I want to talk to Sveta, Danielle, and I don't know, Lisa, it'll create a chat. And what's cool about this is you can name the chat. So you can give it a name if those are people that if that's like a subgroup or people that you routinely communicate with. That's something that you could do, and basically organize your communications that way, and then you can search and filter it if you need to. So I like using the chat for that.
And
where do you name the chat? Like when you started that chat? So let me, because you're recording in it, I saw that like there's some things that I probably don't want to be recorded on screen. So let me do it from here, from your environment. So let's say let's add somebody to our chat, Janessa. So if I so what's another name of somebody?
Joy.
Okay, so we'll do Joy. Okay, so. All right, so now we're talking to one another. So if I come, it's not letting me do it. It's right here. I'm sorry. If I come over here, so right at the top of the chat where the names are, so where it says Janessa and Joy, if I change this name to IFMA, let's say IFMA leadership team, like let's say I'm constantly communicating with and we do this quite a bit on our group. We have a leadership team, like 3 or 4 people that need to huddle multiple times during the day. And we just want to have all those communications in one place. So if I name that, it's now IFMA LT. So you could see, you've got all the recent chats. And then the other thing you can do is you can pin your important ones to the top. So what I like about this, and I use this quite often, is so there's a couple of name chats, people that I collaborate with routinely that I put here. And then, the recent chat. So the other question is, what's the difference between chatting here and then chatting within the context of a team? Because there is a chat function within a team, and I'll get to that in a second. But the way I distinguish between chat and then using the chat stream within an actual MS Team itself is the target audience. So if there's, the problem with, so the difference between Teams and chat is when you have people within a team, the whole intent of the team is open collaboration. So you want people to be able to access as much as they can, but there's obviously some conversations that maybe you don't want public out, publicly where people can find it, people can read it. So that, that's really, what works best for your organization. But like for what we have found is for leadership team conversations, you either do this or you set up a private channel in the team itself. The reason why we don't use private channels for that is because when you set up a private channel, you've now made that part of the team's feed, and your list of teams can get like then you're like your list of chat, like for every private conversation you want to have, if you were to set up a channel for that, then your team's feed becomes pretty overwhelming. So the rule of thumb that we've kind of used is use Teams and the chat feature in Teams when it's groups of people that you want to have this open discussion with, and you're collaborating around documents and action items and all those things. But for things that you probably would have used email for, I find the chat is better. And I actually find it easier to find conversations and go back to things if I need to on the chat as opposed to email. So that would be, one recommendation is start thinking about how you could use chat over email. I find you get better responses. Like people have even told me this in terms of my responsiveness. If they try to get me on email, I typically am late in responding, or it gets lost. Where if it's in my chat feed, I could be on a meeting in Teams, and then like you saw, like there was chat alerts that were coming up, literally as I was presenting just now from members of my team. And I find that it's easier for me to be very responsive, especially if it's quick hit type things. You don't want like quick hit type things. They need an answer on something. They need a referral. They need me to weigh in. You don't want those things to get stuck in email. I find that the chat, because this is where people are already working, very helpful. And also because the mobile version of Teams is great. Like there's been instances where like I'm on a meeting here and I'm sharing my screen and I don't want to respond on the screen because then people can see what I'm typing, and I'll literally just go on my device and be able to answer in Teams, while I'm on a meeting, maybe hosting my screen. And yes, you can do that with email as well, but I just find Teams to be better because typically when I'm responding to somebody, I'm also referring them or pointing them to something else. Like I'm referring them to a document or an action item or a file or something that's also on Teams. So in email, I have to write the email, I have to hit attach, I have to find where the document is, on OneDrive. There's multiple steps to getting to the resolution, and I can't always do that like in the like as I'm talking to you right now. Like if I'm in a meeting, I'm engaged, I'm in conversation, that's too many steps to do it over email, and it ends up, well, I'll just do it later and then I forget about it. Where with Teams, I find the integrations make it so I can be very responsive without necessarily losing my attentiveness on what I'm doing now. It's like I can very quickly kind of respond and then move on to the next thing. So that's how I use that.
Quick question for you. In that chat window, we use it quite a bit as well, but is there any way to get rid of the history? Because some of those trails can, how long do they stay out there? Do you know? So if you go back to the chat function, I guess.
Yeah, I'm in the chat function. I'm not going to go back to my other one just because there's chats in there that I don't want to get recorded in the meeting. So,
but again, I think, you get what I'm saying, right? So this thread could, how long does it go on for? How long does it get saved?
So that I don't know. That's probably a back end thing. I don't know the rules of how long things are saved. I retain the chats because the most current chats always float to the top. So the way I manage that is I pin the ones that are most important. So the ones that I know that I'm going to hit multiple times a day are pinned. The ones that are recent float to the top, and then the ones that are further back in terms of duration and time just kind of float to the bottom. Eventually you can hide chats or delete them if you wanted to, but yeah, that's how I manage it.
Yeah,
Michael, to Phil's point, are you able to archive them at all? Like just so they get out of your view, but it's like, say for whatever reason someone brings up something from the past that might be lodged in that chat, you could like hit the search function and type something in that might pick it up. So that like Slack, for instance.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an archiving feature. I've not seen it. Let me stop sharing for a second so that I can
Yeah, just to add to that too, I'm pretty confident that that chat function can be company specific as well, because when we first started with Teams, I would actually go back to a conversation and scroll all the way up in the thread as if you would during a text message. And then the company changed it. Now it's like, I think it's 11 days or 20 days. So if it's important, you either need to archive it or save that conversation somewhere, because now I think to Phil's point, it's no longer a huge thread. It says on the top of the chat, it says this conversation will be held for. I don't even pay attention to it anymore, but that was a specific change the company made. So hopefully that helps a little bit. It may be company specific.
My company said 2 years.
Wow,
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
excellent.
Also, Michael, I had a question.
Yes.
When you rename the chat, that's for you to look at only? It's from your view, or does that go across all the folks that are in that chat? Will they see the new team name or?
They will see the new team name. So
Okay.
if you update the team name, others will see that as well. Yeah,
The
because
team
there's-
name or the chat name?
The chat
Sorry,
name,
the
yeah.
chat name.
Yeah, the
Sorry,
chat
sorry.
name. Yeah, so renaming the chat name. They will see that as well.
Okay, thank you.
There's Michael, just during our breakout group, I was sharing how, and it looks like you have it on one of the teams as well, the planner, where you can essentially assign different tasks and assign whether it's, say, members of a team and it's a specific due date.
Yep.
If you do have that, it sounds like some of the people in our breakout group said, "Oh, that's pretty interesting." I'm not
Yep.
sure if that's part of this or not.
It is, and yeah, that's where I'm going to go next. Is
Perfect.
is talk about some of the apps now. So I wanted to give you kind of the framework of the main UI, so that the only thing I'll let me just go back to sharing. Oh, I hit the wrong button. So the only other thing I'll show you on the main interface, and then I'm going to start going into what happens within the confines of a team of itself. It's up here on the upper right, and I think you saw me doing this. If you belong to multiple accounts, this is how you switch between them. So you'll notice
It doesn't, it's not showing yet. Unless it's just me. It says
I
it
can't-
started screen sharing.
It hasn't popped up yet.
Black.
okay. So it says I'm sharing on my side, so you guys don't see it.
No,
Nope.
can you unshare and start again?
Yep, I'll do that.
Nope.
Is it working now?
Nope.
Would be working on Zoom.
Oh,
Oh, we're on Zoom.
We are on Zoom.
I mean on Teams, excuse me, on Teams.
So you can't see my screen.
No,
Oh,
It
are you
says
sure you
it-
got on the right screen? Or do you have multiple screens?
No, I'm sharing my main screen. Let me try that again. I'm doing sharing screen 1, which is my main screen.
it
This is what I was
just
doing.
says Michael has
I
started screen sharing, but it
Yeah.
hasn't come through.
All right, let me try something else. All right, I'm gonna try sharing the app instead of the screen and see if that works.
No.
Not working?
Nope.
All right, let me,
It worked
Maybe I should-
before, so I don't know
Okay.
where the disconnect happened.
Maybe he knows you're using Zoom to do it.
yeah, I'm gonna try logging off and logging back in. Maybe with all the pausing and unpausing, something happens. So let me
Okay.
exit and come right back.
Sounds good.
I don't know if Michael's going to get into the files a little bit too. That's
Yes,
just
I am.
great. Thanks, Michael.
Excellent. Now we can see. You're
Okay.
good to go.
Yep, so
Excellent.
upper right corner, if you click this little, where your little profile picture is, that's where all your different teams accounts are. Because I think there was a question, how do I get between different accounts? So you can see I have my Skanska account, the FMO account, and Autodesk. Those are the 3 teams that I belong to. So the way you just jump between them is just literally just click them, and that gets you between your teams. So
Just a real quick note on that, in case people do utilize Teams for business. If you're joined on like a business call through Teams and you try to switch over, I think it says you're going to disconnect this call. Just in case, so people are aware of that. I'm not sure if that happens to you, Michael, or not. But if I'm on, like, say, the business line, or let's say you're on the Skanska call and you're switching over to IFMA, but you're still on that same Teams call, I think when you switch over, it says it'll disconnect this call.
Yes, yeah, and that's happened to me before. It'll sever it. So that happens on the Autodesk call. So if I'm on a call with Autodesk in Teams, and then I want to switch to the Skanska side to do something, it'll cut me off the call. So you have to be in the environment when you're on the call for that
Gotcha.
environment.
Okay.
So the another thing I should probably touch on is, so we actually don't use meetings in MS Teams very extensively. We our environment is not configured for doing MS Team calls with external people, so we can only do it internally with other Skanska folks. So we use WebEx for all of our external calls, and Teams meetings for our Teams calls. So how I use the Teams meetings, if I need to get on if I need to have a quick call with somebody, and especially post-pandemic, you want to see their face, like make it more interactive. Like I'm doing more of my personal, like one-on-one calls are all on Teams. Like I'll just pull up a chat and hit the little meet button and like spontaneously just meet with them on Teams. So like we're using that more extensively. We're starting to use Teams for some of the internal calls, but like the Teams meeting functionality has not caught up with some of its competitors. I mean, and we see all of them because a lot of our clients use different meetings. So I mean, we've used GoToMeeting, Zoom, WebEx, Teams, and each ones have their pros and cons. I don't know that any one is the best, but different ones have different features. So I use it more for really web conferencing, like quick one-on-one calls, but it's not the best of the collaborative meeting platforms if you're looking to do the things in the meeting itself, unless you're referencing documents in Teams itself. So if the nature of the meeting is such that you're actually using stuff in Teams as part of the meeting, then I find that doing it in Teams makes the most sense, because that's where some of the integrations start to work. So Teams versus channels versus apps. So you could see I have a lot of teams here, and I don't know that we even as a company have figured out what's the magic formula. So for when you create a separate team versus when you create a channel within a team, the rule of thumb that I use is if there's a stable group of people who are collaborating regularly around different topics, the group of people should be a team, and then the different topics should be channels. And then if there's a special initiative, like something that's a focus today, but it may not be a focus next year, like we'll set up a channel and then we'll just archive the channel, or I'll just take it out of the view when it's, or hide the channel, when it's not one of my active channels. So like that's the rule of thumb I've come up with, is if it's the same group of people, I just have one team, because if you set up an MS team for every single thing, then you lose some of the integrations of what can happen within the boundaries of a team itself, because SharePoint is what connects it all together. So every time you create a team, you're essentially creating another SharePoint site. So that's the way you need to think about it. If the stuff that you're trying to do needs to be all collaborated across multiple topics in one space among the same group of people, do it in one team and set up channels. But if they truly are different topics or different groups of people, then yes, set up a different team and have each team represent a community of users that are collaborating. So what I have here now is I set up a test team for here, just because I didn't want to show you data that I probably shouldn't show on a share, but I wanted to be able to talk through all the different apps and how we use them and some of the features that I find helpful. So when you set up a team, there's three things that are default. The post, which is the message feed. So I made the comment earlier when to use chat versus when to use the message feed. The message feed is when I want to communicate to the audience to like get a conversation going, almost like a blog, or to share or direct people's attention to documents or to action items or things that might reside somewhere else in Teams. So I use the posts really to direct people towards other things that are happening in Teams, because I can't always trust that the activity feed is going to direct their attention. So I use chat for email, quick hit communications, but I use posts within a team when I'm trying to direct people to do things in Teams. Like, again, that's kind of the rule of thumb that I've created. Files is the document library that's associated with that team or that channel. And then the wiki is basically just a wiki. So before I go into that, let me show you the back end, how you get to the back end. I said that SharePoint is the back end of any team site. So if you come over to the ... or the hamburger over here in the upper right, you'll notice there's a drop down that comes up, and you could set your channel notifications. So this will, for any channel that you are a part of, you can determine what notifications you get. So I've gone through and tried to customize these to the things that I think that I need to know that's happening in the channel. But like I said, I still get a lot of noise on the activity feed. So I think Microsoft can maybe offer some more filtering on the notifications. I understand the intent that the activity feed is what should direct you, but again, you get so many notifications. You either turn them off and then you're blind, but there's not enough fidelity for setting rules, I feel, and setting the notifications. So there's that. You can pin the channel, and then you can open in SharePoint, which is right here. So if I click that, this is now the back end of that team site. So there's some things that live in both places. So the document library that you see right here is the same document library that's sitting right here. And if I back out one, you'll see it's a different root directory. So there's some documents that are stored at the SharePoint level, because the SharePoint level is the higher level, that are not shared here. So like, for instance, general Mike test, general, there's the OneNote. So you can see you can get from both places to the same thing. So it's just, again, a matter of preference, like where you're more comfortable managing your documents. Now, the thing that you can do in SharePoint that I really like that you can't do natively in Teams is, you'll notice in Teams, there's no additional columns here. But you notice there's a button that allows me to open this document library in SharePoint. So if I were to click this, it takes me literally right to the view that I was just showing you. So you can either navigate manually from the home screen, then documents, then general, like you can work your way down, or from Teams, you can just jump right there. Now, why would you want to go into the document library here instead of managing on Teams? And so the way to think about that is administering a document library versus interacting with the document library. Now, the power that you have in the SharePoint side is you can add columns. And this is called metadata. And what metadata allows you to do is to associate things to your documents that allow you to find them, sort, filter, organize them better. So let's say I want to associate a choice to, so let's say I call it document type, and you guys have different, so maybe you have some documents that are tied to FM Forward. You have some documents that are tied to your leadership team. Maybe you have some that are just tied to Boston. So like you can create criteria that are associated with the documents. And then what you can do, so now document type is here, and you can edit it a couple of different ways. So in a document library, so once you've created a column, I like to edit in grid view. This is the easiest way for me, because then what it does, if you edit in grid view, it makes it a spreadsheet that you can interact with. So I'm going to say, you know what, this is an SLT document folder, and then you just exit. Oh, it may not be letting me do that. What is it not liking? All right, maybe grid view is not enabled in your environment. So let's try. So the other way you do it is from the information. Or it may not be letting me name, it may not be letting me associate the metadata to the folder in this environment. That may be the problem. So, so either way, and I'm going to show you a different example in a list in a second, so it doesn't matter. But the general idea is you can associate different columns to your documents and set metadata. And then what you can do is then you can filter them based off of that data to create different views to find your documents. So there's a lot of power, and I would invite all of you to, we could spend an entire hour just around document management, But the short answer is you can't do all this from Teams, but you can do it from SharePoint. And then what you've done here will then show up in Teams in terms of the views you've created, some of the other administration. Some of the other things that you can do in a SharePoint environment, so the notebook that's tied to the team is also here. So if you like working in the note, so I find the notebook version in Teams is a little bit more restrictive. It's a little bit harder to navigate. So typically I will take my notes in the SharePoint version, but then they'll publish to the Teams version. And that's kind of the rule of thumb that I typically use for everything is if I'm working on something, I'll do it in the desktop version and publish it to Teams so other people can see it. But if I'm just consuming information, I'll consume it from Teams. And that rule of thumb works pretty well for me. The other thing you can do in a SharePoint site, which you can't do in Teams, and this is really the power of having Teams, is you can also create pages. And pages are basically web pages. And what's cool about this is like, so you can create a page. And then what you can do is you can, if you're familiar with how SharePoint pages work, they use components called web parts, and web parts allow you to reference content that live in other places. So you can open up a web part and you'll see that it's now giving you all these different things that you can do. What it's doing is it's basically calling on all the different components of the MS Teams or the SharePoint site. So let's say that document library we just built, we want to make that a view. And let's say I want to make it a 3-column layout. With multiple things across. So I want to do the document library. I want to have some text with some instructions for how to use the page. And then maybe I want to put some images. So like, and I'm just going like real quick, but like you could do something like this, right? So now you were published. So what I find pages are good for is pages are good for creating literally creating landing pages where you're combining different elements of Teams or different elements or different content for a purpose. So like an example of that is I noticed that you have a team site around like your different conferences. Maybe a better way to do that is you create a page where you consolidate all the activity, because you can have like consumable content, you can do layouts, you can do some web design, like really, really cool on the SharePoint side. And we use that for a lot of our knowledge sharing stuff is we find that sometimes even Teams doesn't give us enough graphic control to make it look nice. And let me just, I can show you this because there's nothing really proprietary on it. Let me give you an example of what that would look like. So like, here's an example of a SharePoint site that we built that's referencing content that's being developed in Teams, but it's creating navigation and content. It's basically a web page. So that's like the real power of the SharePoint backend of Teams is you can create these immersive websites that are referencing content from Teams. And again, it's another way of directing people to content. So activity feeds, maybe you don't get them. And I guess it's what I'm trying to say is sometimes you have to create multiple paths to get people to content because different people work in different ways. So some people entering the content or collaborating where the SharePoint web page is the entry point, most intuitive way. Some people will do it off of alerts. Some people will do it off of a chat. You got to create different watering holes for getting people to content. So in the interest of time, I want to make sure I touch on all the apps, and then looks like we may not have much time for questions, and I know I'm going fast, but and Janessa, we could do this again if people want to go deeper, but how do you use apps and what are some of the apps that we use and for what purposes? So I talked a lot about posts and communication. I talked about files and using SharePoint's pages to complement the files and get people to them. I use wikis for instructions. So the same as like Wikipedia, sometimes a Word document is just not the right way to organize instructions because instructions tend to have steps and sequence to them. So I will use wiki pages to create instructions for standard ways of doing things. If there's a standard way that I want the team to do something, and I want them to have like instructions, like, the same as, you buy, any product, and, the instruction manual comes with it. Like a wiki is a good way of building instruction manuals around process associated to groups of people. So I use wikis exclusively for instructions. I use Planner to create tasks. So, if it's, what I don't like about Planner is that you can't create subtasks to a main task. So you have to get kind of creative with, and again, Janessa, we could spend the whole hour just on best practices for Planner. But in short, the way I kind of hack it is I use the buckets to create the high level strategies. And then I use the tasks to associate the tasks to those strategies. Because sometimes there's tiering to how you manage something. There's initiatives, and then initiatives have goals, and then the goals have tasks, and then the tasks have milestones. And like, how do you manage all that? I will say Planner is not great for capturing all those different tierings, but we have found ways to hack it, so that you can create some of that tiering to help you better manage, complex initiatives with multiple components. And like one of the things that I will do, so like, let me add a task so you can see it. So like the best practice that I use is I will use the checklist to create those milestones. So like step 1, step 2, step 3, and I will show it on the card. Like you can show different aspects of what's in the card on the front end navigation. So like this then becomes a good way of managing. I've got, initiative 1, and then I've got initiative 2, and then I've got initiative 3. So like these are your main initiatives, and then you have tasks associated with initiatives, and then you have steps associated with those tasks, and then you can assign people, assign people to them, and then this hits their feeds. I would recommend, and this is where I find Planner limiting, is you can add so many people to, you can add as many people as you want to a task, and this shows up in their feeds. The problem is that then it's not clear, well, who's on first, like who's actually leading the task. So you can get around that by either tagging it other ways, or you make a rule that, the only people we're going to add to this is the person who's actually leading it, and then it's on them to then connect with the people who are the contributors. So different ways of handling it depending on how you want to manage it. And then you can use the different views to move things around. So for instance, priority, so if I've got a lot of tasks here.
It's Phil and Georgina. I know we were talking about this in the breakout group. This was the tool that I was referring to, where if you're having one-on-ones, it's really nice because in operations, obviously there's a ton of stuff going on. You can assign different due dates, which is super helpful.
Yep. And this feeds into a schedule view. So exactly what you just said. You can go to a list view. So what I like about this is you have a list of all your tasks. You've got your Kanban board, which allows you to, this is called the Kanban board. It allows you to move things around and kind of manage it that way. And then, you can set, have I started it or not? What's the importance of it? When is you expected to start it? When does it due? And then that feeds all the other things in Teams. So like this is, if you want to integrate your task management in Teams, this is a good way to do it. In the interest of time, I'm going to jump to the other stuff because I want to touch all the apps. Notebooks I use literally for loose notes. So if it's a meeting, we need to capture notes, or I've got people collaborating on stuff and it's not structured yet, like we're trying to figure things out. Like an example of this is I've got a group of people that are meeting with different vendors, and we don't even have a way of structuring it yet. Like we haven't figured out the structure. It's just a lot of content that's filtering into one place. We'll use OneNote as a collaborative place for just text content if you're collaborating. So it's a good white space for collaborating if the collaboration is just text, because you could be in a meeting and I could be typing and you could be typing and other people can be typing on the shared notebook and everyone's text will show up here. So you can collaborate in here, kind of comparable to a Word document, but because you're not confined by like the layout of a Word document, it's a little bit looser. Word documents, the margins and the pages sometimes limit the view and make it not the most ideal white space to collaborate. So I use this as like a collaborative, like the same as I would use a dry erase board. We would use this, but there's other tools that are better for other types of collaboration that I want to show you. So, and this, Janessa, you asked about other apps that we like. So if you hit the plus sign here at the end of any channel, it brings up all the different apps that are available to you, and what are they good for and what are they not good for. So I use lists when I want to create these are the ones that I use routinely. If I'm doing something that typically is an Excel spreadsheet, but as you all know, Excel can be very clunky. People can step on each other. A list is a better way of managing tabulated data. So if you have something that you want to put a little bit more rigor behind, but you're not quite ready for a database, it's just one table of data. Lists are really great because with lists, you can set permissions on fields. You can block, you can create different views for different people. So like one set of data, you can manipulate to create different views for different people, where with Excel, you have to create separate tabs and link file. It's not, Excel is not a great place to create different views of the same data. So if you want to just have a better way of administering a table of data, that's what I use lists for. Mural is not a Microsoft product, so you would have to set up separate accounts, but Mural is absolutely phenomenal if you're doing sticky note type ideation virtually. So that's what it is. It's a virtual sticky note tool. We use this for poll planning. We use this for brainstorming, at the beginning of and end of every year, like when we're doing our strategic planning and you want lots of people to feed ideas and they're, they would normally, if you were doing it in person, with sticky notes, and then you kind of aggregate the sticky notes and that's how your strategy kind of comes together. We obviously can't do that because of the pandemic. We use Mural a lot, and it's a great tool, and it integrates with Teams as a tab. So again, it's nice to have it there. OneNote, as I said, I use it for basic loose notes in a meeting, virtual whiteboard. Tasks I use for project management. So anything that has a schedule component where I'm aligning the team to accomplishing certain things and we need to prioritize, I do that. Milestones is a new product that I haven't had much chance to play with yet, but it seems to be a variation on tasks, but more schedule driven. So this is something we're looking at because we find the schedule milestone component of breaking up a task into subtasks limiting. So we're starting to experiment to see if milestones maybe solves that better. Excel is you literally can make a Excel document a tab, and people can collaborate within the tab in the document. So you could take any document that's in your document library and actually make it a tab. And I use that quite frequently. Like for instance, if I need the team to all collaborate on a document, what I'll do is I'll do something like, so let me think how I can do this real quick. It won't be easy for me to do it quick, but essentially what I'll do is I'll create the document, I'll load it to the document library, and then I'll put a chat in the posts, and I'll say, hey guys, we need to collaborate on this document. And then rather than link them to the document, I'll just link them right to the tab, and then they can come right to the tab and it becomes a one-stop shop. Like they don't even need to go into the document library to find the document. They can just go right to the tab, collaborate on it, and then everyone it's updating on the
Hey, Michael, I got a quick question for you. So,
Yep.
I mean, these tools are all great now, but what was the learning curve for your team to utilize all these different parts of Teams? Did they come already with the knowledge, or what was the strategy to implement?
So good question. It's been learn as we go. So what we've done is initially we had, I would say, a few people kind of structuring and administering it initially. So people that were like kind of to similar how we're having the conversation we're having today, we engaged people that were already like ahead of us in terms of their journey and team. So they gave us an overview like the one you're receiving today, helped us kind of get our way around, gave us some thoughts around the best way to use the tools. And then we had a couple of people that set the structure for the teams that we were using. And then we brought other people in and then learned as they go. And then as people learn how to collaborate in the space, they started to go, and we actually have a Teams group dedicated to collaborating on teams. Like we actually have a place where people can go where they share best practices. You know, every time Microsoft launches a new feature, someone will post there and say, hey, did you see the article on this? Or hey, here's a YouTube video of somebody that did something cool with Teams. And that's how we've learned. So it's been a learn as you go. I mean, that's really what the platform was designed to do, was kind of to be collaborative in an open space. So, I mean, that was our journey, and we've been at it for about 18 months. And I don't know that we got it right out of the starting gate, but we're pretty fluent in it right now.
Thank you.
This has been great. Like, I have all sorts of notes. This is awesome. Everyone, we are at the end of our hour. Excuse me. So reply to, this was all on your calendar. And for those that it wasn't, just reply to me if there was something that we didn't hit that you would like, if we were to do a part 2 with Michael, what you might want to cover and so forth. And in the meantime, if nothing else, if you could go in your IFMA tab and turn on your notifications, that would make me so happy, because I am like my mother. And every time I send you all something in Teams, I then send it to you in email and say, go and check Teams, which is defeating the whole process. But now that I understand chat, I've never used chat. That was like a whole thing as well. So that would be awesome. Sound great?
So quick question, Janessa, and this may sound like blasphemy, but where is the IFMA link?
For Teams, it's everyone that's in leadership, Phil. That's what we want you to be on a committee, and then you can, then we'll have the IFMA. So
this was the hook. You're just dangling the bait out there.
exactly. I have a perfect place for you too. So I'll chat with you offline. So yeah, and so that's where, for those that are in IFMA and within another organization, where he was showing how you can toggle back and forth, you would then have both once you're invited to our team. All right. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
And I can
Cool.
stay on.
Thanks, all.
Janessa.
Thanks, Michael.
If
Thanks,
anyone has any
Michael.
other questions, I can stay on
Oh, excellent.
for a few minutes. If anyone has any burning questions.
Mine are more or less just complete curiosity, because I'm not sure if it's company or if it's through Teams. Are you starting to see, like, let's just say it's 8 o'clock at night, I'm ready to send an email. On the top of my screen, it says, like, would you like to send this email tomorrow morning during normal business hours? And where I'm going with that is I clicked on it because it was the first time I saw it. So I'm not sure if it's company or Teams, but when I clicked on it, I started going down a rabbit hole. I could see all my one-on-ones, who I'm speaking to on the phone most, because we use Teams a lot. I can see all my hours worked outside of business hours. I can see how long I spent on email, how quickly I respond to an email, like the average. And I'm not sure, I'm more or less curious. Have you guys seen that yet? Or could that potentially be a company specific thing?
It might be company. I've actually never seen that screen.
Yep.
I've written an email. So it might be how you have an integration between Outlook and Teams that we don't have activated, but I've never seen that. It's actually interesting.
Got it. All right. No, it sounds good. And then one more, just complete curiosity, is I noticed last week this polls. So if I'm hosting a meeting on Teams, I can create polls and initiate it and do breakout groups. And I'm not sure if that's something you've seen or noticed as well.
Only because we, like, most of the meetings where we have to do that, we do it in other platforms. So like I've seen some people use polling, like instant feedback, like you want to take the temperature of the group. Like we'll do an instant poll that works. We've not used breakouts on Teams, but we've used breakouts in other platforms, and it's worked well. I'm actually interested to try out the breakouts in Teams. I was reading a knowledge article on that yesterday. I don't know that it's enabled in our environment, but yeah, they think cool. You can do that now.
Awesome. All right. No, thank you. Yeah, that's part of it. I'm not sure if it's a Teams thing or company specific. So that's why I was just asking to try to figure out.
Yeah, we have for IFA, we have, like, you know, the free version. So it's like some of these things, like, I want us to see, like, would we use, you know, we use breakouts in our board meetings all the time. I would, and for our other meetings. So it's like, if that's something that we need to upgrade for.
Yeah, I mean, that happens to me not frequently, but like occasionally I'll see a knowledge article or a YouTube video or something that I like that would be really cool to do in Teams, and it's like, where's that button on mine? And I'll send it to IT. Like, I want to do that, and they're like, we didn't pay for that. So it's yeah, so that happens.
Cool.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Anybody
Thanks,
else?
Michael.
Oh, thank you, Michael. It's very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah,
This is
appreciate it.
great.
Thank you. Thanks all. Take care.
Bye.